Hello and welcome to our 22nd episode of Downtown Now. We would like to remind you to please feel free to use the chat features during the presentation and ask questions in the Q&A, and we will answer them later. Now I will turn it over to our Executive Vice President, Business Development, Michael Deaver.
Thank you, Lauren, and thanks to all of you for joining us today. I'd like to share a little bit about Downtown Cleveland Alliance for those of you who may be new to us and not familiar with us. We are the only nonprofit organization that's dedicated exclusively to making downtown Cleveland the most compelling place to live, work, and play. We're a place-based development organization that represents property owners, residents, businesses, as well as civic partners in downtown Cleveland. And over the last 15 years, we've concentrated on building a clean, safe, welcoming, and pedestrian-friendly place that attracts additional investment. We can't do this work without the generous support of individuals, small businesses, corporate partners, and foundations. Downtown Cleveland needs your support now more than ever, and in response to an outpouring of support and request for ways to help, DCA has launched the Unite Cleve Fund. Donations to this fund support small downtown businesses, aid our Voices of Cleve public mural program, which is on display right now in US Bank Plaza and Playhouse Square. It expands our Seeds workforce readiness program that provides jobs and job training for individuals who are homeless, and sustains our Downtown Cleveland Homeless Fund, which helps us connect individuals who are homeless with shelter and needed services. Today, we're going to talk about downtown living. As the largest downtown in Ohio, our expanding housing stock is attracting talent from around the world, making it the fastest growing neighborhood in the region. Just how much faster is it growing than the rest of the region? Well, over the last 5 years, the downtown population has grown by 48%. The fastest growing suburb in Cuyahoga County has grown by 3%. And we're working hard with all of our partners in downtown Cleveland to keep that momentum going to reach our goal of hitting 30,000 residents by 2030. And we have the ideal panel to talk about how we're going about building the downtown population today. We're joined by Mike Carney, principal with the Landmark Companies, Greg Deming, general manager of downtown properties with the Dallad Group, and Scott Wolstein, CEO of the Wolstein Group. Scott, Mike, Greg, welcome and thanks for joining us. Scott, I'd like to begin with you. The Flats East Bank project really led us out of the last recession and was a massive investment that you led in downtown's riverfront. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about the Flats East Bank project and specifically tell us about the living opportunities that exist there today and what it's like to live in the Flats East Bank and why our viewers should consider it. I think you're muted, Scott.
Unmute. Okay, we good?
Sounds good.
All right. Yeah, it's my pleasure. The Flats historically was a great entertainment district, but entertainment districts that don't have other components really don't last. They eventually will disintegrate as the Flats did. And several years ago, we looked at that and we basically, owned some property down there. We didn't own all of it, but we owned a lot. And we said we could either cut and run or we could increase our investment and make this into a world-class live, work, and play environment. And, we, with the help of the Port Authority, we used eminent domain to acquire everything we didn't own and consolidate 23 acres, which is bounded by the river, the Main Avenue Bridge, the railroad track, and West 9th Street, and created what RTKL said was one of the top 2 mixed-use urban development sites they'd ever seen in the world. So we're about halfway through the development of the project. We've put close to $500 million into the ground, into an office building, hotel, fitness center, maybe 20 restaurants and nightclubs, and 240 apartment units. And at full build out, we hope to have about 2,000 units within the project, which will be a great boon to our food and beverage tenants. but what we're trying to offer people is an environment, where they have a live, work, and play opportunity, very close to the center of downtown, access to the river and the lake, um, and with lots of great restaurants and clubs. And I think it's working. I mean, I have 4 millennial children, and it was in vogue for children of that age to go, pick up their roots and go to Chicago, New York, San Francisco, or so forth. And I really think we've gotten to a point where, the Flats is fun enough that, there are people who are giving a second look to Cleveland and saying, you know what, I don't need to leave. I can live here and make a good life in Cleveland. So it's actually working really well. And, we hope to break ground on the second building very soon. And hopefully, everything will pan out, the demand will sustain, and ultimately we'll have upwards of 2,000 units down there.
Well, I know, and now we're showing some images of the Flats East Bank site. And Scott, I know from talking to downtown residents over the summer, boy, the riverfront and the lakefront and the access to the outdoors has been very, very popular with residents across downtown. Wonder what kind of what you were hearing from your residents in the Flats East Bank, and what impact that had on the leasing activity that you saw over the summer.
Well, as you know, most of the apartment units in downtown have been refurbishments of old office buildings and warehouses, and many of which have worked out great. But you have certain constraints. You have to live with the windows that were there, and oftentimes those windows are off the ground. And what we are able to do with new construction in the Flats is give people floor to ceiling glass with access to the outside with balconies, which is really right now quite unique for downtown. And it does make a huge difference. The units in downtown are getting smaller. So, the greatest way to offset any claustrophobia is to be able to open a sliding glass door or a French door and walk out to your balcony and breathe fresh air and look out at the river and the lake. So I think that is a tremendous advantage for us in terms of leasing. And I think the people who are in our building really, really enjoy that amenity.
Well, I want to go back in a couple minutes and talk about kind of what's next in the Flats East Bank. But before I do, I'd like to move over to you, Mike, and talk a little bit about the landmark properties that you have in the warehouse district. And in a lot of ways, you and your family were really, leaders and initiating the movement towards downtown living in the warehouse district years ago. Tell us a little bit about the Perry Payne and Bridgeview buildings, and kind of the value proposition of living in the warehouse district and the landmark properties.
Well, first, thanks for having me, Michael. My father and Bob Raines truly were visionaries. Everyone thought they were nuts. Maybe they were, but starting to try to do downtown housing in 1990 and slowly building up a portfolio. But that their vision was true, and it kind of rings true to what Scott said about you can't just have an entertainment district. You have to have all the components, which is what really over the years has led to the success of the warehouse district. It wasn't just nightclubs, it wasn't just apartments, it wasn't just office. You have all of that. I know it's a somewhat overused saying, but it's a place to live, work, and play. I myself lived in Bridgeview for almost 15 years. I still work here. If I didn't come downtown every day, I don't think I'd be able to live in the suburbs. And I hope to move back down here one day. But Bridgeview is our largest building. It was originally built as 4 separate warehouses in 1911. So the number of floor plans we have in this building alone, I want to say it's over 60 for 247 apartments. So, I tell people, if you can't find something you like in this building, then you just shouldn't be living downtown. Perry Payne was not a warehouse. It was originally built as a state office building. The current one sits right across the street. Just the architecture of that building is completely unique with the red sandstone facade and really 360-degree views of the city. It's a remarkable building. But while the buildings are cool, it's the neighborhood that's important. I mentioned that I lived down here for a while. I lived down here when the old flats were still going. When I moved into downtown, there were only 2,000 residents. And I think we were at 15 or maybe 18,000 by the time I moved out. So it was, I was very fortunate to see all of downtown, but particularly the warehouse district, which is really downtown's first neighborhood, come into its own. You can talk about amenities and workout facilities, all of which we have, yoga studios. But what makes it such a special place is, just walking down the street, whether it's, your neighbor or someone in the building next door or across the street, or someone in the service industry, you might not know them by name, but you know them, and everybody gives a friendly nod. So it just gives you such a great sense of community. And that is spread throughout downtown and into the flats. And I think that's the biggest reason why Cleveland's residential rate increase has been so successful.
Well, I know when my family and I moved up to Cleveland from Columbus a little over 10 years ago, one of the first places we spent some time downtown was in the warehouse district. I remember walking through Constantino's Market for the first time and feeling like, kind of to Scott's point, just felt like this is a real city, which was a terrific feeling to have as a newcomer to Cleveland. And, one of the new additions I know to the warehouse district neighborhood is from the Dallad Group in Worthington Yard. And Greg, I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about that project and kind of what it's brought to the neighborhood, and what some of the unique things are about living in Worthington Yard.
Sure thing, Mike. And hey, thanks again for allowing me to join you guys today on the discussion. And I'd be happy to talk about Worthington Yards. So this was a project that we got into right around 2017. We completed construction towards the end of 2017 in December. So we have 4 unique warehouse buildings that were all once part of the George Worthington Manufacturing Company. It has a lot of history in downtown Cleveland. If you actually go online, you can find their catalog. It's very similar to like a Sears hardware store. Back in the 1900s, you can open it up and you can buy whatever you need from George Worthington. And hence, we've kept the name Worthington Yards. We actually have the original sign still that they used in the building that we hang over our south, exit entry point that goes out to St. Clair. But yeah, all the pictures that you're seeing here are some drone shots that we have. We have a west and an east courtyard. So our west courtyard is a very unique place. We have fireplaces out there, a grilling section for residents, and what we have is a lot of green space. And in today's environment, having the outdoor space that's secured is pretty key for downtown living as well. And you can come and go with your friends. You can have a good time. You can sit out, get a suntan if you want to in the main courtyard there. But yeah, we have 2 fireplaces there, a nice grilling section where the pergola is, multiple seating areas. And if you can see, the back of Cleveland Shop, which is a restaurant right there on St. Clair, comes up, onto our courtyard. And, as part of this project, we redesigned the back of their deck area to allow for people to have lunch, dinner out there and enjoy an evening overlooking the courtyard area. And we also have a pet courtyard, which is our west courtyard area. And that area there is a fully enclosed area, has another fireplace, seating areas. And if you're a dog owner, it definitely speaks, very loud to those kinds of people. And you can take your dog off leash, let it run around. And it's just a very, very cool area to be able to have, within a building. We also have a large community living room space. And, once again, with the live work environment that we're in nowadays, people come down there, they'll use that area to work from home, and it's just a nice area to have where you can congregate and entertain if you want to. Other things that we do in the building is we're a full functioning art gallery. We have what's called the Yards Project, and Yards Project is a rotational art gallery that we change on the first floor about every 2 to 3 months. They're all local Cleveland artists, and it just adds a additional amenity to the building. And if you live here, you get something new every 2 or 3 months, and it's just a really cool feeling. Also on floors 2 through 5. We have, our permanent Dalit collection, and it's just a very nice thing to have, other amenities, fitness center. It's key to have a decent sized fitness center nowadays because more and more people want to really exercise. We have a very large yoga room as well, rooftop deck facility. We have a large bundle of amenities, definitely in the building that are very appealing to, people who want to live in downtown Cleveland. Located right in the warehouse district, you have an entertainment center for many different things you can do, throughout the course of the week. And, the biggest feedback that I get from people living downtown, they love it, and they want more of it. So, which is the, positive news.
Well, we're obviously focused on downtown living today, but I think it's really worth, pointing out and emphasizing that, both the Flats East Bank created a place. Worthington Yard has created a place. It's not just attracting residents. Both of those unique places have been really successful in attracting employers in office businesses. Obviously, the tower and the Flats East Bank has been very successful in attracting office businesses and workers to downtown. And I know, places like Progressive have been very attracted, not just to the warehouse district, but to have access to Worthington Yards courtyard that we see in front of us on the screen now. That's been a real value add to the neighborhood in terms of attracting businesses to downtown as well. And I think, the more places we're able to build like that, the more successful we're going to be at both resident and business attraction.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to note that on downtowncleveland.com, we have links to virtual tours of all the properties that we're talking about today. And there's information at downtowncleveland.com in addition to the virtual tours that provide contact information about leasing and everything you need to know about the amenities of the properties and the neighborhoods that we're talking about today. Scott, I'd like to circle back to you. And, just as the Flats East Bank project led us out of the last recession, we find ourselves in tough times again. And here you are developing more in the Flats East Bank with more plans on the board. And we're hoping you can help lead us out again. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about the next phase that's underway and some of the plans that you have in store.
Yeah, so phase 3 of the Flats, there's 2 different components. One is under construction right now, which is, for those familiar with the neighborhood, we're, between Alley Cat and Forward, we're building a building that's going to have, my objective is to really diversify the demographic that's attracted to the Flats. The easiest low-hanging fruit is, young millennials that like EDM, disco, or disc jockey music, what have you. And we've had a number of people, cater to that population. But there's a lot of people in Cleveland of different age groups and different demographics that aren't necessarily fans of that particular genre. So, one of the things we're adding, in the next phase is we're basically doing a live country music venue. It's going to be operated by the same people who operate Forward. We're really excited about that. Cleveland's a huge country music market, and we haven't really had a great country music venue downtown. Above that, we're going to have a barbecue and a really exciting rooftop offering with a cigar bar and whiskey bar, which will be, I think, also a really great addition to downtown. By the way, the Forward Group is also converting Magnolia to a 1970s disco Studio 54 type operation, which will also draw hopefully another demographic that we haven't really been attacking. We also are building another building that will house 2 bar and restaurant operations. One which is going to be a nightclub with a restaurant below. And the other is going to be an Asian fusion restaurant with a private membership club. And then across the street from the loft, we have a large parking lot, which we plan to build about 325 apartment units and some ground level retail, making West 11th Street a double-sided retail street, not too different from East 4th Street, which has always been the long-term plan. So, we're very, very optimistic. We believe the Cleveland market is a field of dreams market. If you build it, they'll come. I heard you say we hope to get 30,000, residents. I personally think this shouldn't be too aggressive to suggest we should have 50,000 residents. We have 3 million people in the metropolitan area. It shouldn't be a huge, heavy lift to get 2% of that population living in our downtown. We have all the amenities. I commuted 7 years to Chicago, and I enjoy being in downtown Cleveland every bit as much as I did in downtown Chicago, and for some things even more.
Well, it's exciting plans for the Flatsies Bank, and again, I appreciate your bullishness on downtown Cleveland. I should say the 30,000 residents by 2030, we think is a conservative number as well. The bankers like conservative numbers, so we go with that one. But we're all for growing even more quickly if we can do it. I would like to circle back to you, Mike, because I know you're planning some additional investment in the downtown area, and I should point out, although we're very focused at Downtown Cleveland Alliance on building up the core of downtown and building up as much population and job density as we can, as quickly as we can. We also recognize that it's important to have strong neighborhood development to the east and west of us to feed our downtown retail and to provide a talent pool for our downtown employers to recruit from. And one of those properties is the Shoreline, just to the east of downtown. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that project and what you have planned there?
Thanks, Michael. I do consider the existing Shoreline building still downtown. When I'm there, I see office workers from downtown walking and running by during their lunch break. It's less than a mile from Public Square, and as you can see from these pictures, there's nowhere else in Cleveland that has these views and is literally right on top of Lake Erie. Yes, we did acquire the land directly to the east of the existing building. And we were planning in that shot, we were planning on building 220 new apartments on that land with all the latest amenities, volleyball, bocce ball. But of course, whether you're right on the lake or not, one of Cleveland's best amenities is the lake, and you can't get much closer than that project.
And I know things have probably slowed down a little bit in light of all that we've had to deal with this year as a country and as a downtown. But can you maybe give us a sense of the timeline you're thinking of for the improvements on the Shoreline?
We were hoping to get started next spring. However, at this point, we're looking at breaking ground in early 22.
Terrific. Well, Greg, I'd like to circle over to you now, and kind of with the same introduction. We recognize having strong development to the east and west of the core is very important to us, and I know the Dallard Group is doing some work on the near west side that you're excited about.
Yes, we are. And this project that you see here, this is a rendering of Tinnerman Lofts. This is located in Ohio City. And we are actually coming close to completion. We're looking at having first residents move in November and December for the building. And it's very modern, very contemporary, while still keeping the original, architectural aspects from the property in place. A lot of history in the building. This was once the Tinnerman Stove manufacturing company back in the 30s and the 40s. And you also had, speed nuts being, produced in this building as well for riveting. And as you can see with that picture there, we have a lot of, a lot of windows in the units, and that's key. And they're pretty much, a floor to ceiling, type of a window, very large, very high ceilings, kitchen islands, just a very modern feel. And it's definitely the look that, people are really wanting right now to see. And we have quite a few interesting things in that building as well. We'll have another large community living room space, a great fitness center. We actually have a smaller, deck style that's going to go in there where people can congregate and use when they would like to. And that's one of the courtyards that will develop there, as well as also having a restaurant on site at the property. And so it would just be a very cool community feel. And that's what, a lot of residents are after nowadays. They want to know, hey, who's living next door? Who's living down the hall? Let's get together and have a glass of wine or something like that. But in this courtyard here, we'll have fireplaces, a couple real nice pergolas, very heavily landscaped. Pretty much it's your green, paradise. It's a hidden gem. And, a lot of people will really enjoy that. We'll also have a bocce ball court there as well. So people will be able to use that at their leisure. And this will be kind of an area where we can do entertaining at as well for the residents that live in the building. But yeah, definitely, check it out. It's a very cool property.
Well, appreciate that overview. And again, we think this is another, very important investment to bolstering the core of downtown Cleveland. Scott, I wanted to circle back to you and follow up on something you'd said a couple minutes ago. We're all reading the same things right now about the future of cities, right? We're reading kind of Chicken Little stories about, remote work is the wave of the future, and people are not going to be as interested in walkable cities and urbanism as they were prior to all of this. And obviously, we take a very contrary view at Downtown Cleveland Alliance. You're making a big bet in the Flatheath Bank that that's not going to be the case. I mean, tell us a little bit more about what you're projecting and what you're anticipating things are going to be like on the other side of COVID-19.
Well, it's a good question. Frankly, I've been around longer than I'd like to admit, and every time people tell me that, this time it's going to be different, it's never different. Everything reverts to the mean, and people are still people, and people are still social beings. I think there's a tremendous amount of pent-up demand. There's a lot of cabin fever. Yes, people are working from home. It doesn't mean they want to. I think that what I'm seeing, I own 3 office buildings downtown. We haven't seen any reluctance to extend leases and keep space and so forth. I think most people realize that this is a temporary setback, and we'll come out of it and we'll get back to normal. I really, I think that urban living is still, a great momentum. We have a whole generation of young people who are encumbered by student debt, who can't necessarily qualify for a mortgage to build a single family home. And they're what I call trapped renters. And that's giving a tremendous amount of wind at our back in the multifamily business. And I don't really see that changing anytime soon. I don't see that going away. And in fact, young people are still borrowing money to go to college. So I think that when we come out of this, the first year I think is going to be phenomenal in food and beverage. A lot of people may not be thinking about this, but we've had an entire year of weddings that got deferred from 2020 to 2021, and the same number of people that would have gotten married in 2021 are going to get married in 2021. So we're going to have double the amount of weddings that we've ever had. And weddings mean bachelor parties, bachelorette parties, rehearsal dinners. There's 4 or 5 events, that surround every one of those weddings. So I think downtown is going to be flooded, with food and beverage business. Anybody who has banquet space is going to have tremendous demand. And, I think next year is going to be the greatest year ever for the flats. I'm really excited about it. I think we just got to get this virus behind us and get back to normal. And I really think, contrary to people saying, this is going to change the world, I think all it's done is create a tremendous amount of pent up demand and, a lot of, savings. The savings rate has increased dramatically because people haven't been going on vacations. People haven't been spending money in restaurants. And, that savings is going to get put to work. So I think I'm very, very bullish about the future.
I tend to agree that there's going to be all kinds of pent up demand as a result of this that is probably underappreciated right now. Another thing I wanted to ask each of you about, and again, Scott, but probably begin with you. There's a big investment in the region wrapping up with the towpath trail that terminates in the flats next spring. Construction will begin in Canal Basin Park, which will add 25 acres of green space to the flats. And I know, having spent some time in Columbus, I know the impact that the riverfront development had there. The adding of green space to the riverfront has had kind of spilling up into downtown. And I wonder from each of your perspectives how you look at that, the completion of those assets and what they're going to mean to the Flats East Bank and the warehouse district. And Scott, I guess I'd begin with you.
I think that's a great question. And I think that, we have a great city, but one of the things we have a shortage of compared to other great cities is green space. And, it frustrates me a lot over the years when people say, why can't our lakefront be like Chicago? Well, I lived in Chicago for 7 years. You know what's on their lakefront? Nothing. It's just recreation. The buildings are on the other side of Lakeshore Drive. There are no buildings on the lakefront. Right. And everybody keeps showing plans of building high rises on the lakefront. That's the last thing we need. What we need more recreational space where people can recreate. I went to school at University of Pennsylvania in downtown Philadelphia, and I used to be able to walk to Fairmount Park. And when you were in Fairmount Park, you wouldn't know you were in a city. I mean, you couldn't even see the city. It was so great. We just don't have enough of that. And, everything we're doing with connecting to Parkland, south of the city, I would love to see a pedestrian connection to Wendy Park. I think it's very frustrating that downtown residents have to drive 40 blocks west and 40 blocks back to get to a beautiful park that's right on the river. I think that, we really, the city planners historically haven't put the premium on green space and recreational space that it needed to have. And I think instead of always talking about going vertical, we need to think in terms of horizontal, because that is a huge amenity, that our downtown needs. And I think the towpath could be a tremendous asset for downtown living. I think making a better connection to Wendy Park could be a tremendous asset. And, anything that we can do to connect to nature, I think you can't underestimate the importance of that.
Well, I think that it's not quite the direct link that you'd probably like from the Flats East Bank over to Wendy Park, but I think there are some plans in the works. I'm not sure the status to connect the West Bank to Wendy Park to make it a little bit better than the 40 block drive, but I agree. A more direct connection would be most welcome. And again, hopefully the addition of Canal Basin Park on the East Bank will help make that connection all feel a little bit more pedestrian and bike friendly. Obviously, the warehouse district's directly adjacent to the flats and just a short walk from the future Canal Basin Park and the towpath trail. Mike, as you look at the warehouse district neighborhood and your properties there, how do you look at the impact of the towpath trail and the hopes that you have for the neighborhood?
Oh, I think it's huge. I too, I lived in Chicago for about 5 years and it was great. And they did a good job with green space. As far as the towpath trail, it's been a long time coming. I'm ecstatic that it's finally being completed. I can tell you, even before the connection to downtown, not only can I not buy enough bike racks, I cannot find enough places for bike storage. Even as speaking of green space, when I was in high school, we used to go sit at Settlers Landing and watch concerts when Nautica opened. And one thing I tell all of my residents when they complain about green space downtown is you do have Huntington Park, you have the malls, and I know the Downtown Cleveland Alliance and other groups have held events there in summers past to try to promote it. But having that connection, I think, is key to every area of downtown. I know I see my residents. My garage is off of West 10th, so every day when I come in and I leave, there are always people walking around on Settlers Landing, and that increase in green space down there is going to be amazing. Also, with going east of the city, the mayor made it a priority to have a lakefront bike path, which part of it's already there. We're going to tie that into our project, which will tie it into the East 55th Marina. So you can bike straight from there to downtown on a safe, maintained bike path. And one thing that I did not mention earlier is we are going to include a public park as part of our new shoreline project. So that's more lakefront access to the public as well.
No, thanks for mentioning that. And then, Greg, same question to you. With you have investments in the Warehouse District neighborhood. What are your hopes for the addition of green space in the towpath trail?
Well, I think it's great. Obviously, if you look around downtown Cleveland, we have some small green space areas. But from a standpoint of, having a direct connection on, the towpath area there, I think that's going to open up a lot of doors. People like the bike ride, people like to walk, people want to get outdoors, especially, right now. If you walk down the street at, lunchtime, you have a lot of people that are trying to get outside, who are working, who are living at home. And this is just an additional benefit to, living in downtown Cleveland. And, like Mike and, Scott said, in my buildings alone in downtown Cleveland, we probably have, for example, at Worthington Yards, I probably have 75 to 80 bicycles that we, keep in our garages, and people use them all the time. And I think it's definitely we're heading in the right direction for green space and looking at those areas there, and it's only going to benefit, future people moving downtown, and as well as, retention for people who are currently living in downtown Cleveland. So I'm definitely very pleased to see that progressing along, and I hope we can continue to, improve and, look for new ideas for green space and continue moving in the right direction, so to say.
Well, I think it's a good point to pause and turn to the audience and see what questions we may have rolling in. I should note that we have Councilman Tony Brancatelli in the audience, who has also endorsed, Scott, your idea of 50,000 residents in downtown. So we have a public official in the audience who's embraced the new goal.
You can help with that.
Thank you.
Lauren, do we have some questions from the audience?
Yep. First question, keeping families in downtown. What is in the pipeline as far as family-friendly amenities, daycares, et cetera, to attract new or keep couples from moving out? Thank you.
Well, I could probably speak to amenities a little bit, but I'd be interested in all of your perspectives in terms of how you look at your housing developments. And Scott, as you're planning future phases of the flats, how you look at that question. I will say at the outset, we recognize that this is a big issue. We attract young people, they start families, and we want to continue to keep them here. That's why last year, Downtown Cleveland Alliance in our city advocates, our young professional group, worked with the Great Lakes Science Center to add a children's playground in North Coast Harbor. We knew that was an important amenity, and we need more of that in downtown, but that was a start. And we know that while we have a high quality daycare in the warehouse district in the state building, we need more early childhood care. That's a gap in our system. So we know that's something that we're continuing to work on, and we continue to talk to property owners, talk to operators, and see if we can find the right match. But Scott, maybe I'll begin with you, since you're at a stage of thinking about future phases. How do you think about attracting families into downtown?
I think it's a heavy lift, to be honest with you. I mean, I think that the sweet spot of the market clearly is not the family. It's the young millennials and Gen Xers, and it's the empty nesters. A lot of that has to do with education. And until we can offer educational options in downtown, that are competitive with what's available in the suburbs, it's going to be an uphill climb, to get people to stay downtown when they have children of school age. I think whatever we can do to expand the options, magnet schools, school choice, what have you, having a downtown school, I think any of that is the most important thing that you can do to attract families. And until we do that, the sweet spot of the market is going to be, people without children, whether it's before they have children or after their children are grown. That's just the reality today. And I look forward to a time where where that can change.
Mike or Greg, anything to add?
I just want to, mirror what Scott had to say about education. And Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do think that there is another daycare option in the pipeline. I don't know if that was stalled by COVID, but that would be very helpful. I mean, I can tell you, my father is very proud of this. When my older brother was born, my mom and dad lived in the Chesterfield, which was brand new at that time. And they brought my brother home to live downtown as a baby, and they lived there for a few years. I can also tell you that the average lease nationally used to be somebody would stay, if you average it out, about a year and a half. And that's just not the case anymore. I mean, there's some outliers. We have some people that have been living in Bridgeview since it opened in 2000. We have a lot of long-term residents, but we used to only have maybe one family per property. And I can tell you that number has increased dramatically over the last 4 or 5 years. So we are getting more families.
Greg, anything that you would add?
Sure. I agree once again with, Mike and Scott and what they were saying. And from a development standpoint, in order to attract families into the area, that's something that we all need to look at on, what the correct answer is. And I'll give you an example. In our portfolio of residential properties, I want to say I have 5 or 6, households that, have a, small child. And I know those living conditions are not as easy because you're in downtown, and transportation and all those kind of things. Daycare are, certain areas that need to be looked at and, see what can be done for them. But I'm definitely on board with trying to figure out ways of, growing, a family orientation, for downtown Cleveland.
Lauren, do we have any further questions from the audience?
Yep, this one is for Mike. Mike, you might have touched on this already. You've noted you've lived in downtown for 15 years and now work and own property. Can you talk about how downtown has changed in the time you've spent in downtown Cleveland?
I don't think we have enough time for me to completely answer that, but I can tell you
Cliff notes.
It's been a dramatic change. I was here before East 4th Street opened, I remember standing out in the freezing cold for the opening of the House of Blues. But really, one of the most dramatic changes that I've seen, and aside from the obvious, we now have a grocery store. There are more people, but the difference in just the cleanliness and quality of downtown is night and day since the founding of the Downtown Cleveland Alliance. I mean, it's kind of like an iceberg. All we see are the clean and safe ambassadors. There's a lot more that goes on, but just that small part of the organization, after a Browns game, before they were there'd be trash on the street for maybe, halfway through the next week. Now you walk by 5 hours after a game, you wouldn't even have known there was one. But also people are friendlier. There are more people. My leasing agents get mad at me if I'm in the leasing office and they're talking to a prospective resident. I'll tell the person, I say, you know what, I want you to live in one of my buildings, but I really don't care where you live. I just want you to live downtown. And that mentality didn't exist all that long ago. And I think a part of the success, and Scott and Greg can speak to this, people think that we're nuts in Cleveland because developers talk to each other. We're friends with each other. If we have a question, we'll answer it honestly to each other. In other cities, nobody talks. And that with more developers coming downtown, I mean, gosh, for the longest time, it was just Landmark doing residential. Now everyone's in the game. And I think that's great. And that has helped create the community that was not there 15, 20 years ago.
Well, Mike, I appreciate the kind words about the Alliance, and I'd be remiss if I didn't, point out that, Mike, Scott, Greg, your team at the Dallad Group have all been strong supporters of the Alliance, and we really appreciate it. And it really is a team effort, and we appreciate that collaboration. So thank you for your support.
You're welcome, Michael. And I'm not one for shameless plugs, but the difference is you can't compare it to anything else. It increased the quality of life down here tenfold.
I appreciate that very much. We might have time, Lauren, for one or two more if we have any further questions from the audience.
Sure do. For Scott, you mentioned Flats East Bank was relatively dead. What was the key factor in your decision to invest in the Flats and begin its resurgence?
It was a difficult decision. It was, we could have cut and run, but, I always was in love with that riverfront, and I just thought it had tremendous potential. For those of us who are old enough to remember what it was like, it used to be a bunch of factories lining River Road. So there really wasn't any access to the river from the majority of the property. You had to pay a cover charge to go into a bar and come out the back in order to see the river. So I knew that, long term, it was never going to work the way that it initially was developed for industrial. It really needed to be master planned. We really needed to tear everything down. We needed to control it all. We needed to provide public access to the river. And I think that made all the difference in the world. And, I have an apartment in my building and I stay there a lot on weekends. And, you really can't overestimate, what a great feeling it is, to open the door and walk out on your balcony and look out on that river and see the freighters going up and down, see the lakefront. It's a truly unique property, not just for Cleveland, but really internationally. And I just wasn't willing to give up on it. And, my dad had great visions for it when he was alive. And unfortunately, he didn't live long enough to see those his visions come to reality. But hopefully he's up there somewhere looking down and smiling, because this is exactly what he always wanted to do in the city.
I would like to add very quickly to Scott's comments about the river. The reason that there's a slide of Bridgeview with a freighter is because in all my time living downtown, I had an apartment facing the river because I absolutely loved that view. And even after all those years, when I heard a freighter horn, I'd go running to the window like a kid to a Christmas tree on Christmas morning. It never gets old.
Never.
No, it is one of those things that is uniquely Cleveland. Lauren, I think we probably have time for one more question if there's one from the audience.
In what ways does downtown Cleveland need to improve to reach 50,000 residents?
Fair question. We put the number out there.
Well, it might be a little controversial, but I think that, a lot of the residential growth in downtown has been refurbishment of old buildings, and that has, been economically successful. We're getting to a point now where those opportunities are fewer and further between. And, we're going to have to rely on new construction, and new construction in downtown is expensive. And, we also have very heavy tax burden that we have to cover, when we make investment in downtown. So I think it's going to require a public-private partnership to really understand, what the headwinds are economically to make the numbers work. And if we lock arms and look at it together, open book, I think that it's real possible. But it is, new construction's a little different.
Yeah.
And, we're in Uniontown, if we have subsidies, it's MBE, FBE, you never know what you're going to find underground when you dig a foundation. It can cost money. There's environmental remediation. So all of that stuff, it makes it, those are headwinds for new construction. And I think that everybody has to understand, if they want to see that kind of a downtown population, it requires a really open book public-private partnership.
Well, and I think a good example, Scott, of what you're talking about is, there's legislation at the State House that I know we've been strongly supportive of at the Alliance and others to create a tax credit that would be similar to the historic tax credit, but would support new construction in urban areas to see the kind of infill development that we all want to see. So I think it's a great point, and there are some tools out there that we're advocating for that if we can get them in place, can help us build the kind of downtown we want to see.
Great.
I'd like to add, yes, it will absolutely take public-private partnership. It'll take people like myself and Scott and Greg and Gilbert and Weston Corp, and we're all going to have to work together to reach that. I personally think that Cleveland could sustain up to 60,000, but it can't happen overnight. There's an absorption.
Yeah.
You can't have too much new product coming online at the same time. We've been fortunate so far, but it absolutely can't happen overnight. I mean, the good news is companies are continuing to come downtown and stay downtown. I would say about 70%, probably higher, of my residential base are not coming back from school. They're not moving in from the suburbs. These are people that are moving in from out of state that have never been to Cleveland for a job. So that's another key part of the equation, is we need to keep bringing businesses downtown, and we need to keep the ones that are here, keep them here, as well as startups, which downtown has been having a lot of success with, especially in the tech fields.
By the way, the one thing I did want to say about COVID is that, I don't think it's a huge headwind for the future of Cleveland, but I do think it's a huge headwind for cities like New York and San Francisco.
Mhm.
And, I think that there's a lot of companies, that have seen that they can operate with a lot of workers working remote, and they don't need to spend over $100 a foot for office rents, and are looking to maybe explore, some of the B markets to put some of their operations. And I think cities like Cleveland are going to benefit from that. The benefit of operating in those big congested cities in the world of post-COVID isn't what it used to be.
Yeah, I mean, we need to probably be careful in Cleveland not to, as people talk about the negative impacts of high density in the coastal cities, that we need to remember, hey, we've built some density here, but we actually, we have a lot of opportunity because we're not as dense as some of those coastal cities. I think that's a really great point that we need to make sure that we take advantage of here in downtown Cleveland. We're running up on our hour, and Greg and Scott and Mike, I really want to thank you for the time that you've shared with us today. Thank you for your ongoing support and the investments that you've made in downtown Cleveland. I do want to remind the audience that all of the properties that we've talked about today, you can take virtual tours of and find out more about by visiting us at downtowncleveland.com. We didn't talk about it today, but I also want to emphasize that we welcomed Heinen's back to downtown just yesterday. And I think that sends just another terrific signal about how our downtown businesses are looking at the future of downtown living, that Heinen's is once again here as an amenity for existing residents and as an asset to help us continue to attract more residents into downtown. We're going to be back again next week talking to some of the small businesses that have not just stayed open, but actually brought new business into downtown over the course of the pandemic. And we'll hear a little bit about how our small business owners and entrepreneurs are being the resilient Clevelanders that we know and have come to expect. We'll hear more from them on the Downtown Now webinar next week. And then 3 weeks from today, we'll be joined by David Gilbert, the president and CEO of Destination Cleveland and the Greater Cleveland Sports Commission, to talk about the NFL draft and some of the other issues that the Sports Commission and Destination Cleveland are working on. So I hope you'll join us next week and tune again 3 weeks from now as well. In the meantime, Greg, Scott, Mike, once again, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Lauren.